Xerxes is a worker placement and resource management game. At the start of the game you will decide on your goal cards, and these will come in two flavours: taxation, for which you need resources, and you will either get a military unit from what you can use for the rest of the game, or some VP. And then campaign cards, which is where you use your military units to get VP and to take VP away from the other players. To gain these resources and military units, you will place figures out onto the map. One of your figures will be permanently on the map in your starting city, and each round you will choose from your figures placed out whether you want to collect the resources or the military unit from that region. So here blue can choose from rocks and corn or a shield unit. As well as using these resources for taxation, you can also race to build buildings, which give you points and take away points from your opponents, and there are some that are better to be built earlier rather than later. Every round an event will be drawn that will either give some negative effect, generally stopping you from getting a certain resource, or a positive effect. Also, the other place you can place one of your workers is on the turn order, and rearrange the turn order how you see fit. The earlier you are in turn order, the more resources you have to give up, and if you're later in turn order, you gain resources. Each player board tracks the resources and also has a special power and tells you which city you will start in and be there for the rest of the game. At the end of 7 rounds, the player with the most points wins. Xerxes is a almost gateway level resource management game with a little bit of worker placement thrown in. Now, in 2 players, the worker placement is quite generous, but there is not many spaces on the board, and when you play with a full accompaniment of players, then those board spaces are going to be taken up very quickly. So you need to be quite flexible if you're going for military strength or for the resources. And that's a nice choice. Xerxes does a number of nice things, from the slightly mean buildings that give you victory points and take them away from everyone else, which works really well in a game that is relatively low scoring, to the player order track, which rewards you for going later in player order and punishes you for going further in player order. I also quite enjoy in this game, because it's so short, you don't want to be taking more and more goal cards, so you start with all the cards you're ever going to have in a game, and that works really well. Do you prioritise the taxation cards to get some military units so that you can then get the military cards scored, and they also generally take points away from the other players? Or do you prioritise the military ones first and then try and react to everyone else? The event cards add a nice kind of variance in, and we enjoyed our time at all player counts. Obviously, as I've said, at more players it becomes a tighter kind of knife fight in a phone box. The game is, I think, primarily for players who are relatively new to resource management, or who want a light experience that they can just throw out or use to teach people. Resources are tracked on player mats, which I think is a nice, clever idea, because it's a bit fiddly to be, if you were gaining and throwing them away all the time, it'd just be a bit fiddly. So overall, Xerxes made a really good impression on me. I'm really keen to see how the Kickstarter does, what they do with the components, with the player boards. If I had one little quibble or 2 little quibbles, for my game group, my main game group, it is a little bit too light. And that's not really a complaint, because we need games that kind of bridge the gap, and this is a very good one of doing that. And the other one is that I just felt that the player power that avoids all the negative events might be a tad overpowered compared to the rest. But then I haven't done the same level of testing as the developers. If you like what you hear about Xerxes, please click the link down below. As soon as the Kickstarter goes live, there will be a link there, and you can go and find out more about the campaign to your heart's content. Thanks very much for watching Board Deck and Dice. We will see you next time.